Hey Andrew, to start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well as your company, GiftAMeal?
Yeah, of course, and thanks for having me on. So I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, and came out here to St. Louis in 2013 to go to WashU for undergrad. And while I was there, I came up with the idea for my startup, GiftAMeal, which is a mobile app that gives a meal to someone in need each time a user takes a photo at a partner restaurant. So I came up with it and launched it in October 2015, graduated May 2017, and then have been working on it full-time ever since.
Mm-hmm. And can you walk me through that background story? Like, how did you first come up with your business idea?
Mm-hmm. I had an internship at a venture capital firm when I was at WashU over the summer. And while I was there, I was on a lunch break with the other intern, and we were talking about how people discover restaurants and how people want to support businesses that are giving back. And one thing led to another with like influences from the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge for like viral social media posts and people wanting to post to support charitable causes, with combinations from buy one, give one models from Tom Shoes and Warby Parker, with influences from OpenTable and Yelp to bring this together as to a socially conscious marketing tool for restaurants, with a really easy, free way for users to support just by taking a photo. So we came up with the idea, put my savings into it, and then hired an app developer and went from there.
Mm-hmm. And have you always been entrepreneurial, or was there a particular turning point for you when you decided, oh, you want to, instead of doing like a regular 9-to-5 job, to run your own business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's almost two separate questions. I think I had always had entrepreneurial tendencies, but I never labeled myself as an entrepreneur. And that was really the big jump for me with GiftAMeal. I mean, I was entrepreneurial in the sense that I was the vice president of a children's charity for 4 years that helped raise about $300,000 for underprivileged children. And, you know, I always have leadership position in organizations I was in. I co-owned a nonprofit storefront on WashU's campus when I was there before doing GiftAMeal. So I'd done things like that, but I didn't label myself as I'm going to go be an entrepreneur in the future as my full-time job. When I got the venture capital internship, I was really just looking at how can I get experience in business to figure out what pathway I want to go. But I was probably thinking about something like investment banking at that time. Because I was thinking, okay, that would be a nice stable career where I'll be able to provide for a family and things like that. And my thought process then was, why risk it to try to go for something really big with a startup if I could go with something that would be very fortunate that I would be able to be in a position to provide for family. The incremental amount of money from selling a startup for a lot of money wouldn't bring me that much more happiness. And so I was pretty anti becoming an entrepreneur originally. But then when I was at the venture capital firm that summer, I really kind of got that startup bug from kind of seeing the creative problems that you would be able to face every day as an entrepreneur and the impact that you'd be able to make. And I was exposed to the field of social entrepreneurship. And so then it was at that point when I had the idea for GiftAMeal that I was like, okay, I could dive into this. And then there were multiple inflection points and decision points along the way where I was deciding, because I was still a student at the time, over each summer, do I take an internship at some big company to build up my resume, or do I work on GiftAMeal? And the big decision was when I graduated about going full-time on GiftAMeal, especially when I couldn't pay myself a salary at that point. So I'm very happy I decided to become an entrepreneur. Long-winded answer to your question, but I did not always see myself as one.
Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, but GiftAMeal currently partners with over 200 restaurants. Is that? Mm-hmm. And so how did you first land that initial customer, and how did you grow from one restaurant to over 200?
Yeah, so the initial restaurants were super difficult to get on board, even when we offered GiftAMeal for free, just because people are a little bit iffy about trying something new. And even bigger than that, one thing I didn't realize at all back then was just the cost of occupying a space in somebody's mind to have to think about you, even if you're free. And so when we were offering GiftAMeal for free to get initial restaurants on board, now the restaurants pay monthly subscription to be on the app. It's the mix of marketing giving back. But we were literally going door to door trying to sign up restaurants to be on this for a free trial. And then it was really just about getting those first early adopters, asking restaurants for advice. And typically when you ask people for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you can end up getting money. And so when we were asking for restaurants for advice and input, then those people being the early adopters, and then we were able to point to those restaurants to others and say, hey, this person are partner restaurants of ours, these owners, and they're well respected. You should join too. And that helped us really build it up to where we are now with 200 partner restaurants and 35,000 people on the app, and where you've hit, I think, 456,000 meals provided already, which is over 500,000 pounds of food. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what would you say was the most challenging moment for you so far in starting your own business?
It's a good question. The most challenging moment, I would say, would be figuring out how to scale. I think that in the very early phases, there's some very easy next steps. They're not easy, but you know what they are. It's like, okay, we need to build the app. We need to launch the app. We need to get like the first restaurant sign up and you get the first 100 users. And then once you get that like very initial traction, it's figuring out, okay, now how can we grow this concept that we've started to build and see if this thing actually has legs to make it somewhere. And so I think that was the biggest challenge for me, was figuring out how do we grow this and having the confidence in myself and the willingness to ask for help for others in order to really experiment and learn and get us to this point.
Mm-hmm. And kind of on the flip side, what has been the best or most satisfying moment for you so far?
I think that there's a couple. I think one is seeing the impact on our team members and seeing kind of how they've all individually grown. And whenever we have an accomplishment, I'm always happy about it, but it's great to see their reactions as well and really see, okay, this thing that I've built is now impacting other people so intimately as a job, as being a lifestyle and being a part of their life. And that's something that I like a lot. And then, it's great. Something that brings me a lot of happiness is when we hit these milestones for meals provided, like when we just hit 500,000 pounds of food, like that's an unfathomable number in my mind. Like maybe I just don't have like the spatial reasoning for it, but I can't imagine 500,000 pounds of food in my mind. And so that stepping back is something where it's like, wow, we were able to actually make a difference. Even as like a for-profit company, we were able to do something really big for the community. So I think it's a mix of the impact for my team and the impact for the community are the things that excite me most and that I'm proud of.
Mm-hmm. And if you could go back in time when you were first starting out, what is one advice you would tell yourself?
If I go back to my earlier entrepreneurial self, I would tell myself to not be afraid to fail and to always start small and constantly iterate and experiment and learn. I think that when I created the very first version of GiftAMeal, I did not listen to people saying, hey, create a minimum viable product of just the core idea and then experiment with that. I built it out to be my full vision initially. And there ended up being a lot of waste in that first version of the app and a lot of features that users just didn't really care about. And then I had to pay developer money in order to remove those features. And so I think just be able to constantly change and iterate and incrementally add things on, whether it was for the app or for our sales process or things like that, would have been a lot more helpful.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a role model? And if so, what have you learned from them that you apply to your business?
I think that for me, I don't have one specific role model that I aspire to be. I pull from qualities that I see from people around me and from leaders of companies all over the world. But everybody has their own unique problems and everything too. So, like some people that I pull traits from or try to aspire to be like would be people like Danny Meyer, the founder of Shake Shack, or someone like Bill Gates and the impact he's made for the community, or like even like the drive and competitive nature of somebody like Kobe Bryant. I think that, especially since I grew up in LA and was a diehard Lakers fan and everything. And I think that there's just traits I can pull from a bunch of different people. And then I like to try to blend that together through my own lens in order to have my own unique leadership style.
And so you've obviously done a lot of pitch competitions. So do you have any tips on how to best do a pitch, whether that's an elevator pitch or like a full-on 10-minute competition pitch?
Yeah. Number one, be honest and transparent. I've seen companies try to like extend the truth in pitch competitions, and then the Q&A section just get torn apart when the judges realize they extended the truth. So being honest and transparent and genuine, number one. Number two, be very clear at the very beginning of your presentation what your actual product or service is. Sometimes I judge pitch competitions, and I'm halfway through someone's pitch and they've talked about the market and the problem and stuff, and I have no idea what their product or service is, and so I don't have context for anything. Next, number three, I'd say adapt your pitch to the judging rubric, so that way you can have the best chance to win a pitch competition. Or if it's just an elevator pitch for like a sales pitch or something like that, adapt to the person you're pitching to and make it clear and relevant for them. Number four, this is going to kind of contradict as I'm listing off a ton of things. I'd say keep it concise. You don't need to give 20 reasons for somebody to vote for you in a pitch competitions or for like somebody to buy your products. They're not going to remember all of that. So having a very simple, clear value proposition is something that's really important. And number five, for regardless of whether it's a sales pitch or pitch competition or pitching an investor, have a good balance of quantitative and qualitative evidence showing that your company is really returning on its value proposition. So for us, we would mix in testimonials from our restaurants and users, advisors, with case studies actually showing our return on investment that we would generate for restaurants and survey data and things like that. So I think those are my 5 key points of advice for pitching.
Gotcha. And Andrew, when I met with you almost 2 years ago, one of the advice you've given me was to try out different things and take different classes, and also to write out the key takeaways from those classes. And I've been doing that, and it's been really helpful to reflect on my semesters and plan my path forward. And so I was wondering if you have any other advice for students in general, or maybe students who are specifically interested in startups and may want to start a company of their own in the future.
Cool. Yeah, well, that's great that you're doing that. I think that's super cool. And it's something that I wish I'd done early on in my college experience. I would say for people that are interested in doing startups, I would then if you're doing one during college, I would take every lecture that you go to in every class and try to see how does this apply to my startup, and use that as a spark for a brainstorm. It might not lead to anything, but seeing things through a different lens is sometimes very helpful, and an interdisciplinary lens as well. I'd say also be open to learning about different industries, because there might be solutions or business models in other industries that can apply in one that you're interested in as well. In terms of students that are interested in entrepreneurship, I would say one thing too that I think people don't think about as much when they think about entrepreneurship. They might just think about one thing, is there's a lot of different ways of being an entrepreneur. And the success factor of it is really from your personal goals. So you don't need to necessarily be a scale or fail startup where you sell for $1 billion or you go bankrupt. There's a lot of places in between. You could go the route where you raise money from angel investors and venture capital firms and try to get an exit. You could also be building it up with your savings and not be trying to exit and just create a sustainable business as well. Or you could be looking at a franchised approach, or you could be looking at something that you could just build to make an impact, and it doesn't necessarily need to be super profitable. Or you might want something that has a side income for you when you're working full-time somewhere else. And so talking to aspiring entrepreneurs, I would just say figure out what your goals are with your startup, and then make sure that the strategy and vision that you're creating for the startup is aligned with that, and that your team and investors are on board.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And how are you and the GiftAMeal team doing under the COVID-19 pandemic?
It's challenging. It's not great by any means. There's a lot going on in society right now with the pandemic and everything with George Floyd as well. And so this is really brought to light what is my responsibility as an individual and as a startup in order to make an impact and support the community during this time, in addition to just trying to make it through as a startup that doesn't have like a ton of runway to make it through. So, we saw very early on this was going to be a challenge for the restaurants, and we wanted to do what we could to support the restaurants. We didn't want to be takers during the crisis. We wanted to be givers. And we also wanted to be able to give back to the community because we saw that with schools being canceled, children weren't going to have as big of access to school lunches anymore, and the elderly, being most at risk of COVID-19, were going to be in a difficult position as well. And a majority of the people served by the local food banks that we support are children and the elderly. So we launched a multi-point plan where we first pivoted the app to be able to be used from home, where people could take a picture of their takeout, gift card, or delivery purchase, so we could still drive traffic and orders to these restaurants, even if people couldn't be dining in. Secondly, we added a filter on the app where users could filter by curbside pickup, takeout, delivery, gift cards, etc., so they could support the restaurants too. Third, we pledged to match up to $5,000 in donations from our users to the local food bank, Operation Food Search, and we raised over $22,000 for them to provide immediate hunger relief for those in need during the crisis. Number four, we created a bunch of partnerships. We partnered with Uber Eats for delivery, Pay for contactless payments, and others in order to get discounted rates for our partner restaurants to help support them during the crisis. And we're always looking at new ways that we can be supporting. So whether it's helping coordinate food donations from our restaurants to the local food bank if they have a surplus of food. We're looking at how we can help health professionals in the space. We've just been constantly trying to figure out what can GiftAMeal's role be in all of this in order to best support the community. And with our partner restaurants, we also offered that if they were struggling during the crisis, that they wouldn't have to pay their monthly subscription of GiftAMeal, which is normally $49 a month. It's not like a lot of money, but during the crisis, things can add up. And so, that we had some restaurants take us up on that offer. Not every restaurant did. So that was a significant dip in our revenue, but it was something that we saw as necessary. And a lot of the restaurants replied back being super grateful for it and expressing that they wanted to be long-term partners with GiftAMeal. And so I think doing the right thing during this crisis will yield good business results for us as well in the long term. But to answer your question, it's been a challenge. We are fortunate to win the $20,000 first place prize at the Global Impact Awards about a month ago. And we also got a PPP loan as well, and some money from the Arts Grant Relief Fund. And so that gave us the funding to help make it through the crisis. But as an entrepreneur who always likes to be constantly growing, it's challenging to be in maintenance mode and then just not actually be able to grow our sales because we don't want to be asking restaurants for money when they can't pay it. So it's definitely been a challenge for me personally and for GiftAMeal. But I do think that we've handled this the best way that we can, and I'm very proud of the impact we've been able to make for the restaurants in the community. Even small, I'm rambling a lot here, but even small things like we saw that the restaurants were going to be struggling to adapt when dine-in was going to open. And so we ordered hundreds of floor decals for the restaurants that they could just put on the floor to help people socially distance so there wouldn't be crowds congregating in the restaurants. And so we also launched a podcast called Food on the Table to help promote the restaurants and what they're doing in reaction to the crisis. And the idea is covering the people that put food on the table for all, whether it's a restaurant owner or a food bank. And so as you can see from my rambles, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing, and we're trying to figure out new things every day. And with everything going on with the George Floyd situation, we also added in a Black-owned restaurants filter on the GiftAMeal app so users can support. And we're also looking to help promote those restaurants extra during the crisis, and are just trying to figure out as things pop up, whether it's a pandemic or big societal issues around race, what is our role in all of this, and what can we be doing to help, even if we are a small startup and our efforts are a drop in the ocean, we still feel obligated to make a difference and give it our all.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So that's it for today's interview. Thank you, Andrew, for taking the time to do this. I wish you and GiftAMeal the best of luck and stay safe.
Appreciate it. You too.